The Front Row Back Row podcast is a show where two grad school buddies discuss physical therapy entrepreneurship. I helped guide a company to an 8-figure exit, and I'm now starting my own mobile company. Brian grew his mobile practice to 4 clinics, and he's now doing $1 million in revenue. Join us as we help you grow your own business.
All right, guys, welcome to the Front Row Back Row podcast. A little different, me introing than Owen today. So me and Owen were just literally riffing on a thing about leases and buying different businesses and how this works. And so I felt like it was a good way to just literally switch up this episode this time and just talk about the good, bad, and the ugly, right? We talk a lot about the positives of entrepreneurship, all the great stuff, right? Marketing and sales, and look at us building our businesses and all that stuff. But no one talks at all about the risk, right? No one talks at all about what's going on. And so Owen was like, hey, there's these opportunities, there's things going on. So I don't really want to put Owen on the spot and like talk specifically about this, but what I want to do is, Owen, let's talk around it a little bit. When it comes to looking to buy businesses, when it looks at evaluating businesses, I think sort of the pitfalls, man, of like, and I just, again, the different style today. Let's just riff on what are the pros and cons of certain situations when it comes to starting from scratch, looking to buy out a lease, that kind of thing.
Well, so this is, to set up what I was asking you is, I have a gym owner locally that came to me and he basically said, I'm thinking I might want to get out of my business. Eventually, I'm going to give you a pretty sweet offer in terms of like a sublease, right? Like I pay him, $800 a month to see people in his gym. And he said, in a few years, lease ends up, I'll just try and hand it over to you. And as long as you make it so that I have a job where I can just train people and I don't have to deal with all the business stuff, I'm good. Right. So in my head, I'm thinking, okay, not much of a downside, right? Like $800 a month. And he's got a 3,000 square foot gym. It's in a great location, really close to a lot of stuff that would bring in, a lot of traffic for me. And then I was like, sounds too good, Brian. What are the downsides? And the nice part is, I mean, you built your company by, you put a PT in a gym and then maybe or you just become the gym, right? That's what you've done now to grow. So, I was interested to hear your thoughts on like what this is. Cause I mean, this isn't the first time I've heard this. Like I've had probably 5 or 6 personal trainers who are like, hey, do you want to put your table in my janitor's closet and we'll call it a lease, this is probably just the best like mix of location and cost that I've had. So I was thinking about it. I was like, hey, I should start taking insurance and let's go.
So it's so interesting, right? And this is why I think it's a good episode to do a little differently, right? And to play around with this. And you can even see in the tone, like how we're talking much more seriously than this kind of be upbeat and joking around about stuff. And we'll get back to that, I promise. This is this episode, right?
People come here for the comedy.
Exactly. I wish that's what it was. So I said to Owen, I was like, I just started, and I'm not going to share all the stories. I'm not going to share them all because I could soapbox on this forever.
Yeah.
I think sometimes, and I don't know if people who are listening to this podcast, if you're listening out there and you kind of hear this, is I think, the thought of entrepreneurship, it's awesome. It's a really amazing thing, but there are also negatives, right? There also are like, every action has an equal and opposite reaction of some capacity, right? It's just the idea of how the universe works. If you're going to have a consequence for decisions, even if it feels good in the moment, right? It's like ice cream. I love ice cream, but it's got consequences, right? So when Owen said this to me, yeah, exactly. So when Owen said this to me, right, one of the ways that you prefaced it was like, exactly. It was almost like, it sounds too good to be true, Brian. What am I missing? Right? Like, what am I missing in here? And so then I started telling him some stories of what happened. And I'll share one with you guys. So we were looking to buy a gym, just like what Owen was talking about. We were subletting from the space. We were in there. And honestly, I'll tell you, the one big one that happened was COVID, guys, right? Like for those of you who were entrepreneurs during COVID, that sucked. Let's all acknowledge that. That was the worst. And for those of you who
were managing people in COVID, it sucked.
Yeah. I mean, like that was the bazooka the hand grenade that was dropped on my business. I didn't see coming. We talked about the housing market. We talked about this. Like, I love that when people are like, oh, I don't think houses are ever going down. They're going to keep going up. Like, yeah, because you all saw COVID coming, right? You all saw 2008 coming, right? Like, risk in that way is not inherently looked at because we are so programmed to look at the positives when we're moving. But when it comes to this type of stuff, we can be negligent of like doing the work to see all the negative shit, right? That's just the reality of it. And so when it comes down to like what happened here was we kept paying rent through COVID, right? We worked through that. We paid rent. We did what we need to do. And we looked to buy the business. And on the day we were going to close, the day we were like, this is going to be our business, go to the bank, the whole thing, they signed the contracts, had the lawyers that we definitely paid, all the things. The guy was really weird about it. And like was like basically it was like, I don't really know. I can't make the signing. Or like, you're literally going to sell your business today. He didn't like put aside time.
Yeah.
The landlord died. Again, can't make this up. The landlord died, or at least that's what I was told when I was son. We based off the attorneys and whatnot. And I talked to his son who said my dad died, right? And now they're just looking to sell the building. And by the way, the business you were looking to sell, they are behind on rent $150,000. And so being down $150,000, we're evicting them, and we're also going to evict you too.
Yeah.
That's the reality of what happened. And so we were scrambling to find a place to build our business. It's been great. We've built a great business there. We've grown. But guys, like to say that didn't hurt us financially, personally, relationships were destroyed. Like this is the stuff that we don't talk about on this podcast, but the reality of what happens. And so I'm not trying to say this to say, hey, don't do entrepreneurships. But one of the things I think you and I, Owen, right, pride ourselves on this podcast is not doing fluffy bullshit, is actually giving real tactical advice. And so this is some real tactical advice is like, do the due. So my first advice is to Owen is sign NDAs, look at P&Ls, right? Find out what that lease is, get all the information, like know the numbers inside and out. And that's how those offers are made. And that's how that process works. And again, we have 21 clinics. We do these deals all the time now, but the reality is they're still just as risky. Right. So anyway, I know I riffed a bunch there, but I wanted to just kind of chat.
No, well, and I think that's the thing, right? So when I was in corporate, right, and we were acquiring clinics, we had a legal department, we had, mergers and acquisitions people, like we had finance department, all that stuff that, I was operations. So yeah, I can build a great clinic, but that sort of stuff is where, you've lived that experience, right?
Yeah.
And the other hard part is now you have, I'm assuming, a lawyer on retainer for this type of thing. You have, a track record of this is just how we do business. If you want to do business with us, this is what happens, right? And I know a lot of people listen to this podcast, this may be the first time they're in a situation where they have to sign a lease, right?
Yep.
And people are like, well, it's a lease, I can always get out of it and all that stuff. And it's like, well, yeah, but there may be a penalty. But the biggest penalty I'm seeing is that I spend all this time building a location, doing all the location things, like start accepting insurances that pay better than most, all that stuff. And then boom, in a heartbeat, right? If I wasn't looking at his P&L, if I wasn't looking at, the lease and all that other stuff around it, it can go away. Right. And
100%.
that's that, does it mean I lose my house tomorrow? No, but it does mean that like all of a sudden you have this cash flow that you're basing all of your liabilities on. And those liabilities, they still want, the EMR system still wants their money, right?
Totally.
The employee that you hired just wants their money, right? All that stuff happens, and you're sitting there as the owner saying, who the hell's going to take me?
For sure.
And then you have to sign another lease that's probably not going to be as good, right? So those are the things where like the experience I think really matters, and that's why it's nice to be able to do that. And I think that like a lot of owners will have this narrative in their head of, well, I'm going to go mobile and then I'm going to open a space and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And I think like by nature, people who are really good at being solopreneurs, building themselves up, maybe marketing, right?
Yeah.
They aren't the same people who are the due diligence guys, right? And I'm like that. I am not the due diligence guy, right? Our mutual friend, Devin, due diligence guy. We worked really well together, right?
Love that. Yeah.
But but he also would not be what I'm doing, right? So, those are some of the interesting points where it's nice to be able to have somebody I can talk to with that. But I think any of our listeners can also kind of say, well, hell, I I didn't
Yeah.
realize like there's risk to PT. Like everyone always tells me, like everyone's always going to need
Yeah.
PT, and insurance covers us, so it's never going to fail. And yeah, it might not fail, but you could have to go home and tell your wife, I'm making $40,000 this year.
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Exactly.
know,
Well, that's it, right?
that's
Like I said
failing to
that.
me.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's variations of failure, right? And there's a reason for why only 15% of businesses get sold for actual money, right? There's that kind of piece that comes to it. Um, and some of it is there's a lot of inspirational stuff like don't give up, have discipline, do all those things, of course, right? But there's also some stuff like COVID that people didn't see coming. And there's also some stuff where like so and so didn't do this or do that. And like, oh, there's a handshake agreement here. Oh, this happened here. Hindsight's always 2020.
Yeah.
Whereas like the problem with hindsight in 2020 is that realize that you're making a pretty big bet. Now you're making it on yourself. But
Mhm.
to Owen's point, there's also expertise that Owen has that now and different skill sets that now there's other pieces that go along with doing a deal like an M&A deal or doing something like that he had help with in the past. And that's
Yeah.
okay. That's fine. I mean, Owen's right. We have multiple. My kids love asking that question. They go, Dad, do we have a lawyer? And I'm always like, yeah, I don't know why they would love that question, but I'm like, yeah, like we have attorneys that we know and we use, and like,
Yeah.
at that point, like if something's got to be done, we do it, right? Like, so I think at the end of the day, the thing that I would say to people, and again, by the way, this is also for Physio Growth. This is also the importance of mentorship and why it'd be great to ask these questions at any point for $99 a month, so that you can talk to people like me and Owen who've gone through this stuff and can tell you all the details of what you should be thinking about and the right decisions and what you should be making. This is what Owen and I do, right? We talk back and forth and help each other and how we're growing our business and how we're doing that. And so that's something where I think, for us, and when I look at here is here's the other part. Let's bring the mood back up a little bit. The coolest thing I said to Owen was, you got 5 or 6 people that are coming to you and talking to you about potential deals and things that they want to do with you, which means that they're seeing you as a legitimate business person that you should be doing stuff with them. I promise you, those people are not going to go away, and there's only going to be more and more and more of those. I get emails daily about people trying to acquire Evolution all the time. It doesn't mean that I say yes. It doesn't mean that I'm looking at anything. All I'm saying is when it comes to the importance of what we're trying to build, you can continue. And you've heard me on podcasts say, like, continue the process, like continue down the path of what you want to do when you start your business. Continue down the path of what you're trying to build. Maybe if you're listening to this podcast and are thinking about starting a business, maybe it makes more sense to try other avenues first that you want to do and maximize things like patience. Patience is key. Understanding the risk. Like I've lost friends in this game. Like now there's just so many things where I've recognized over the last 10 years of doing this that there's so many things that I wish I knew hindsight 2020. There's an awesome quote. I think it was, I can't remember who it was, that the owners of NVIDIA, the company
Yeah.
NVIDIA, they asked him, they go, if you had done it over again, what things would you have changed, or would you have done the entrepreneurship over again? He goes, no. The CEO of NVIDIA is a multi-billionaire. He's like, I would have never done this again. He's like, I didn't realize the people I would lose, the sacrifice I had to make, the time I had to do. That's a multi-billionaire. That's a guy who made it, quote unquote, made it in a lot of people's eyes, right? Like that way.
Yeah.
He was like, I would never do this again. And
Yeah.
so why would somebody like that say that? Well, because of these things we're talking about. So I think it's also good to have an episode every once in a while. It's why I think you've heard me talk about insurance and cash and things in this and business. And that. The reality is there's a lot of things that go hand in hand with success. So that's
Well,
that's what I want to talk about.
and that's the thing is, we're not the fluffy emotional podcast, but like honestly, like a lot of the major decisions just come down to you got to have patience, right? You got to know what's important for you, what's important for your family, what's where you think you want to go with it. And then honestly, how big you want to make it. I mean, we know people that we look at them and say, man, you got a great stepping stone to have 8 clinics. And they just look and say, I don't want that,
Yep.
you know?
100%.
And like, why would I do that? So these
Yep.
are, it's interesting because, normally we're very kind of tactical about this is how you run ads and this is how you throw an offer out and this is what AI will do, but when it comes down to it, the difference between people who are like happy and like, oh, cool, I get to go to work and, all that stuff, no matter what size of their business, the difference between them and miserable people, because I've seen miserable people who are making a shit ton of money,
For
you
sure.
know,
100%.
and
100%.
that's what you got to ask yourself. So these are good things to talk about. And I think, like I said, it's good to show that there's not everything's always an A+ home run. Like,
Totally,
obviously,
totally.
we'd sell a lot of coaching classes and stuff if we said that, but like, you'd also be pretty pissed.
Well, I think listen, if you personally, if you found value out of this episode, please like leave comments for us. Let us know that like you thought this was an interesting episode. Obviously, we changed it up a little bit. We always like feedback, and please hit the follow button. Please ask, tell other people about the podcast and listen. That's the way we grow. It's great. But at the end of the day, to kind of close this up, I think the big thing, Owen, is to me, it's this, like, I love that I started my business. I did it for the reason of like having more flexibility and stuff with my family and helping more people and driving a bus in a direction that I believed in.
Mhm.
None of those things included making more money. Right.
Yeah.
And I think what happens to a lot of people is they get frustrated at their current position or with their current mission or what they're doing within their work and think, well, I got to go to Cash PT to do it. Right. That's why I feel like there's so many people out there that I don't want to start dropping names and doing that. But there's a lot of courses out there. Well, check out my course and start your cash-based practice. Here's this model. Here's that model. The reality is you can build anything and you can build a business, but there's a lot of stress to this too. And there's a lot of risk and there's a lot of sacrifices that need to be made. And you just need to be prepared to do that. And like, can somebody like us help you do it properly and grow and a little more safely? Totally. But no risk is mitigated completely.
Yeah.
And so when we think about that process, that's what this is. I've bought these businesses and like done these things and like keep growing, and it's fantastic. Open new clinics. It's a lot of fun, but there's also risk and it's challenging. And so I've also had to make the phone calls that were difficult and do the conversations that were difficult and have those things. And that's the thing that I don't think everybody sees that business owners have to do, right? They don't see all the ugly, right? And so that's the thing that I would say to a lot of people. So again, I hope you saw people value in this episode. If you're interested in talking to us about physio growth, like check out physio-growth.com. Happy to chat with more people. Thanks, man. Change it up a little bit.
I like that you're the host now.
Owen let me took the wheel. I like that. I like that. Every once in a while, I got to drive. Or every once in a while. Why do you think I do emails halfway through these things sometimes?
Okay. All right. Yeah, you should put yourself on mute more when I hear like the clickety clack of your
clickety clack. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
All right, guys. Coordinated fingers. That's why you're a wrestler. All right. Bye.
All right. See you, man.
See ya.